Welcome to Story Chats at Inspy Romance. I'm Elizabeth Maddrey, and I'm here with my 2.5 co-hosts.
I'm Narelle Atkins, and I'm a complete whole person.
I'm Valerie Comer, and I am a complete whole person too. And Cooney is a whole complete feline with a little bit of catitude today.
Yeah. She only sticks around for like half the episode, so she,
Well, not even. Usually she's gone in 5 minutes, and today it might be like 3 seconds.
Yeah, she's already slapping you on the face.
Yeah.
She's already to go. Like, Mom.
But she usually turns up. Like, it's very unusual for her not to turn up.
True.
Yes.
Sometimes she's just like, no, I don't actually care about you and your people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, today we are not actually talking about Cooney, but we could. We are
like, well, in that case, I'm out of here.
Literally.
We are talking about CCR with heroes and heroines who are police officers. So usually when we have an occupation-based episode, we discuss a little bit what it means to you to say the hero or heroine is that occupation. So in this case, a police officer. What are you looking for in the story when one of the characters has this job, Narelle?
I think what I'm looking for in a CCR is different to a romantic suspense, for starters, but we can talk a bit more about that later. Mm-hmm. But in a CCR, I just probably like to see them wearing a uniform at some point in time if they are a uniformed police officer, because I think that's important. And doing some kind of police work that connects, preferably it connects into the story, that they couldn't just be I mean, if you could substitute them and they could just be a janitor, for example, then it probably doesn't count with this type of occupation. So I'd like to see them at least doing something connected to the job in the story.
Valerie?
I agree. I think there's a place for stories where the character's job isn't super important. Like that isn't always, sometimes it's their volunteer work or what they're doing at the church or whatever that winds up being important. But if we're going to call it a police officer's story, like in quotes, then he or she needs to be seen on the job in some way, and it needs to somehow interact with the other character and matter. It just needs to matter.
Yeah.
I tend to agree. I do think it is, and it sort of leads us into our next question. I think it's trickier with a police officer in particular, because that does lend like to the romantic suspense aspect of things. So it is a little trickier to do that when you are wanting to keep your focus on not being suspense, but just being CCR. So so I'm probably a little more lenient with it. Because it's not necessarily super exciting to see people giving out speeding tickets, for example, although that could be
better scrap that one book I was going to talk about.
It's a good meet cute.
Oh, well, I've got to prove that statement wrong with my first book.
Okay. All right.
So there we go. Next.
There we go. All right, Narelle disagrees. Did you have trouble finding non-CCR police officer books? I struggled a little, but I managed.
You mean non-suspense?
Yes, I did mean non-suspense.
I did notice that there was small town sheriffs seem to be the go-to for non-suspense. I guess the pace of life, as we all know if we read romance, the pace of life in a small town is easier and more casual, and there's less likely to be big danger. So I think it would be harder to find, maybe not impossible, but harder to find non-suspenseful police officer romance novels set in a big city than in a small town or rural area.
All right, Narelle?
I did not have trouble with this one at all, and I probably could have added more. And my third one, I'd planned, if we get to have time to talk about third, I'd planned to reread but ran out of time. But I also could have found more. So I don't know, maybe I'm drawn to police officer characters in CCR, and not all of them are in the small town either. Although I do think the sheriff, I do really like the sheriff hero in small towns. Like, I will pick up a book with that trope in it for sure.
Cool.
Now I'm curious if
I
we've
know.
got any female police officer
Ooh.
romances. As it occurs to me, I actually don't. So
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, well, I do.
Oh, yeah.
okay, good. Make sure you make
If I
mention
have
that one then.
And I thought you'd have this one. And this is one I thought, I know I don't need to reread this book because Valerie will have it on her list. And I'm like,
And I'll
she
probably go,
doesn't."
of course that
Yes,
one.
yes, you will. You
Okay.
will.
Oh, the suspense is killing me now.
Right, I know. All right, so who's first? Who's going first?
Narelle with that one,
I'm going to go
obviously.
first. So I'm going to talk about, this is the first one that came to mind, is
Okay.
Meredith Resce's Organised Backup. Now, I happen to have covers with me. How exciting,
look at
paperbacks.
you.
So this is Organised Backup, which I have talked about before in episode 13 in international settings and episode 70 in Mum's Side Characters, which is a Mother's Day, because this is the Luella Linley License to Meddle series. I'm just going to quickly show you book 2, because in October, I was at the Amiga Writers Conference in Australia. That's our big Christian writing conference. And In Want of a Wife won the Caleb Adult Fiction Award. A romance beat out the non-romance books as well. So I was so thrilled for Meredith, because this is my favourite one out of the 3 books, to see her win the Caleb Award.
Is that the one with tradies? Which one is that one?
No, I've got the tradie cover specially for you guys.
Oh, yay.
That's the tradie cover, and that's the 3rd book.
Okay.
Which is the...
That's the arranged marriage one.
Yes.
Okay.
It's The Nurse and the Lawyer is the one that...
Yes.
That's my favorite. I like the second one the best. I don't know why. It's just my favorite.
I think I like the first one, the police officer, the best. It's so cute. And Speeding Ticket does play into, as soon as I started to say that, I was like, well, that is a fantastic meet cute. Yeah.
There is our police officer on the cover. So with this one, Cam is the police officer. And you know what? He's in Adelaide, but he's sort of on patrol in the suburbs, not a high octane type job. And Chloe, is it Chloe this? No, Chloe's the second one. It is Megan. So there's Chloe, Megan, and then the brothers in the 3rd book. So Megan in this one works for a really awful sleazy boss. So she's in this small business. She does the office work. And he is just disgusting, like he's awful. And she has a mortgage and she really needs this job. She can't afford to leave because the money's good. And so her mother has been Luella Linley, who writes Regency romance novels and wants to meddle and interfere and get all her children married off. She's listening to Megan and she's like, how can I help Megan? Because she's in this awful situation with this horrible boss who, et cetera, et cetera. So her mother's heart is sort of saying, what can I possibly do to help Megan? And so Luella happens to get caught speeding, interestingly enough. And instead of getting upset that she's getting a fine, she meets the young police officer that pulls her over and convinces him to catch up with her later, because she's pinged him as, I'm going to matchmake him with my daughter. Because if my daughter went out with a police officer and the sleazy boss knew about this, then he would have to stop and behave himself. And so it's a fake relationship premise with that. And it is hilarious.
Yes. Well, that sounds fun.
Yeah. And I'll let Beth add on more because I know she likes this one.
I didn't have it on my list, but I really did. You talked about it enough that I finally just had to read the series. And it is just so fun. And like, laugh out loud. I don't laugh out loud when I'm reading frequently. Like even most that are meant to be rom-coms funny, I tend not to laugh out loud when I'm reading them. But this one had several truly laugh out loud moments.
Yes.
And then if you like to travel internationally, for, if you're not in Australia, I always love that as well, to see another little piece of life and see what that would be like. And Australia's not, scary and strange. It's very similar, but still it's different enough that it adds a little extra flavor to it. So super fun. Yeah.
Yep. So it's set in Adelaide in South Australia, which probably isn't as common a setting. Most people probably think of Sydney and Melbourne or the Great Barrier Reef or Queensland when they think about Australia. So it's one of our smaller cities in the centre of the country, effectively. If you go south and go right to the middle, that you're in Adelaide. Yes. And if he wasn't a police officer, the story wouldn't have worked. So
No.
that's where it ticks my box, because that was what drew Luella to ping him as the one that she was going to matchmake, because his job was going to help Megan.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Valerie, what you got?
Well, while we're on the topic of speeding tickets, I'm going to rearrange the order I have my books.
All right.
So this is an Emma St. Clair, and it is Sandover Beach Christmas, which I read a couple of years ago, but it was popped straight into my mind, and I reread the opening and thought, well, actually, I kind of got sucked back into reading it. Ripley is an event organizer, planner, and she has invented a fake boyfriend to get her parents off her back. And they don't live nearby, but her mom is always like trying to set her up. You know, when you come home, you can meet this guy. And she's like, so finally she's like, I have a boyfriend. But she plans on fake breaking up with her fake boyfriend before her parents ever show up, right? So
Sure.
it's just to get them off her back for a while. So she has her overbearing mother on the phone while she's driving to Sandover Island to do this wedding thing, and she gets stopped for speeding by Cash, a police officer, and she's digging around looking for her registration, like blah, 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 and her mother is still talking to her. So he reaches in, picks up the phone, and answers it. And mom is like, "You're the boyfriend." So mom invites him for Christmas dinner, and Ripley finally gets her mother off the phone, and she apologizes to the cop. She's like, "I'm so sorry. I've invented this fake guy for my mother. You didn't have to play along with it. Now she thinks you're real. I mean, she did think you were real, and I don't know how I'm going to get out of this." And he's just horrified that she would lie to her mother. So he agrees to go to Christmas dinner. And then he decides that he is, in fact, not going to be fake broken up with. Well, hello, kitty.
Oh.
And
This
they
is
see somebody
Miss
else's
Daisy. She's
Daisy.
actually woken up and she's actually here. This is special guest.
Oh, very
Cooney's-
nice. So Cooney's old
Yeah.
hat.
Beautiful.
Cooney's
And
glare
she has
hat.
her white socks and white belly, and she's very, very upset with me. But we digress. We'll go back to talking about books.
Sorry.
Yeah, so that's what I had to say about Sandover Beach Christmas. It's not the first book in the series. I can't remember what number it is. But it was quite an opening scene, and I was just like, you could just see her like, my mother, and I've been speeding, and oh no, and where's my registration, where's my driver's license, and she puts the phone down and she's digging for all this stuff, and she hears this voice and he just picks it up, which, I mean, you wouldn't ever do, right? But it's a story, so have fun.
I have been pulled over twice without a driver's license in my possession.
Oh my goodness.
Not just, and it's because I'd been going to the gym and I just hadn't thought to put my driver's license in my gym bag. And then another time I was, that was once. And then another time I just ducked out to get my daughter, pick her up from when she'd been doing like a pre-kinder program. She was only about 3 or 4. And I just plain forgot to take it with me. So twice I had to talk my way out of getting in a lot of trouble. Pardon? For driving. I'm actually getting better at not doing this.
Good. Ripley
Well,
had
I didn't
it,
get fined.
struggled to find it.
If you're law enforcement in anywhere near Canberra, maybe be on the lookout for Narelle, apparently.
I was thinking, yeah.
I've
But she's married. This is
Yeah,
not a romance setup.
Not a meet cute, sorry.
But I can go away on holidays and leave my credit card at home because I use my phone, and why would I need a physical credit card? Oops, I have to pay for something and I don't remember the numbers.
That's the problem.
Oh my.
It's okay. I had another credit card, but yeah, no, absent-mindedness can live in
We're
my
talking
world.
police officers in Narelle in fiction.
Sorry.
Remember?
Sorry. My turn. So my first one is The Gift by Anne, and I'm going to say it the way I think it should be pronounced, and it may be wrong. Perreault. Perreault.
Probably Perreault.
Okay.
Probably
Depends
French.
on how French your French influence is.
Probably true. Okay, we got the name though.
Yeah. So this is it was a surprisingly long book. So
Okay.
if you're looking for a longer, meatier read, because sometimes like you're in the mood for a book that's gonna span a lot of time in the story world, and there is a lot of time in like that passes in the story world. So Dakota works as a pizza manager of a pizza place. And in Boston, they're in Boston. And it was supposed to be a job during college, make a little extra money while you're in college. She's got a weird relationship with her family. She feels sort of abandoned by God. She's in this sort of weird place. And Shane Donovan is a police officer who ends up helping her out of a bad situation. She walks home at night after closing up the pizza shop, and she decides to take a shortcut, which, you shouldn't do as a young woman walking alone through the streets in a bad part of town. Shockingly, you should not do that. So, but Shane is on patrol with his rookie partner, and they intervene and they give her a lift home, so that because she was just going to keep walking, and they're like, no, get in the car. And so then they keep sort of bumping into each other as he's either, doing official police things or like taking a lunch, and they happen to be at the police pizza place, etc. It wouldn't really have worked if he was not a cop. Especially because the fact that he is a cop is why he is at odds with his very wealthy family, who expected him to come be part of the family business. And so it's really good. It has a very, very strong faith element, faith thread, good spiritual progression in both of the characters. And his job really super necessary to the story. It read a little bit like a debut. I really thought that it was her debut novel. It is not. But it's still quite good.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Narelle, what's your
The second one I'm going to talk about, and I'll be fast with this one because I have talked about it before, is Finding Peace by Melanie D. Snitker. So if you go to Recent Reads, episode 84, you can hear in great detail more about this book.
Let me
So
just
I'm going to
cross that off my list.
Oh, like it makes it easy. You can add to the end of this because I'm going to talk very quickly about it. So Laurie's a struggling photographer. Tuck is the policeman. And what I liked about this one in terms of ticking the boxes is that she has her car broken into. Tuck's the man on the spot. He's the one that gets called out for the job to help her. Then her studio gets broken into, her photography studio, and he's the one that does the call out. And his nephew, I believe, has Gideon is on the autism spectrum, and she specializes in photographing special needs kids and families. And so he basically employs her to do some photography for the family as a gift. So that's sort of the premise of the story. And Valerie can add what she'd like to add.
No, that's pretty much covers it. In that here you've got a young lady whose family has money, and she's decided not to bank on her family's money. And so she's living in probably not the best part of town with her photography studio and where she lives. So Tuck is kind of after her about that as well, like that she's just not living in a really safe place. But yeah, it's been a while since I've read this one. It's been several years, but I do remember and when I was thinking, what have I read with police officers? I was like, oh, I've read that one.
Yeah.
So it just was memorable enough that it definitely came back to mind right away.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
All right, what's your next one, Valerie?
The next one?
Since you're sharing one.
Since we're sharing. Her Mountain Refuge by Laurel Blount. It's a love-inspired. I really enjoy Laurel's books, actually. She might be one of the very few love-inspired authors where I think I've read everything, except now she's writing some Amish, and I haven't read that. So go figure.
Mhm.
So there is Charlotte. She is a pregnant widow.
Mm.
She's a wedding dress designer, and she's desperate to get away from her domineering mother-in-law. This baby that Charlotte is carrying is all her mother-in-law has left. So she's just like, just obnoxiously rude, actually. So Charlotte passes out as she's fitting a bridezilla, like minutes before this woman walks down the aisle. It's not a good time to pass out.
No.
She's doing last minute alterations. So then we have the hero, who is small town sheriff, Logan. He was a foster kid, and the series of Laurel's follows these foster kids who had been taken in by his foster mom, who is kind of a meddler, but not on the kind of level of Charlotte's mother-in-law. She sees a video making the rounds on YouTube of Charlotte's collapse. Now, Charlotte and Logan had known each other in school, but they drifted apart. She was moneyed, he was not. He was a foster kid, but she had a ring of her own mother's that he had noticed she always wore when she was troubled. And so he sees that ring in the video, and he's like, Charlotte needs me. So he drives to Atlanta in the middle of the night.
Oh my goodness.
And finds her mother-in-law in the room, like totally bullying her. And he pulls the police officer card and says, not on my watch.
Oh.
But she is too out of it to really like speak her own words on it. Anyways, it turns out that she sends him the message that yes, she does want to be protected from this woman. And so he takes her back to his foster mother for her to look after him. I mean, the kind of drama that happens, doesn't it sound love inspired?
It does, but
it does have those things, those elements that
so
seem
adorable,
there. But I enjoyed it. And being a police officer in this small town is really important to Logan because of his own father, and how who had relinquished him into foster care several times.
Oh.
And who is a major loser. So there is some low-level suspense in it when his father shows back up and stuff, but it is mostly just the love story between Charlotte and Logan, and this second chance that they get after knowing each other many years ago in high school, because that's what you do.
I'm gonna have to read that. That sounds really fun. That sounds really, really fun.
It made me go back and read the first book in the series, and I have the third book on pre-order.
You don't reread very often.
I don't reread very often.
No,
that's significant.
You reread the first book in the series, or you hadn't read it yet?
I went back and read it because the love inspired books don't tend to go, this author has this series and this is the second book in it. And I'm just like, okay, well, his sister is married.
Yes.
And this seems like it might be important. And so when I dug back in her Amazon author page, I was like, that book looks like it was the previous one released, and I looked it up, and the names in it, but they don't make it easy for you to trace.
I thought you were saying you had reread the first one, and I was like, wow, this is red letter.
It would be. So
very good. All right, so my next one is Lawfully Adored by Jenna Brandt. She has the series, as you might suspect from the title, Lawfully. They're all lawfully something. They are all law enforcement officers. Surprise. And in this is the first one in the series. It's a long series. It's like 14 or something.
Oh, wow.
It's long.
They're all hers? It's not a multi-author?
I feel like this one is all hers. She has some, I know she does, with some other people who write in the same sort of like the Chapel Cove, but
Right.
but I don't know. I think it's all hers, if I recall, but I could be wrong. This book is hers, and it is book 1 in the series. And Aiden is a canine officer, and he is just done with God because his parents died in college. And he was like, if God was really a loving God, this wouldn't have happened to me. Kind of, where we've all been there to some degree at some point, right? So and Lindsay is a social worker, and she has a really strong faith that helps her to do her job, but she's absolute not dating because she just got dumped by a long-term boyfriend because it turns out that she has endometriosis, and the doctor says it's very unlikely that you'll ever be able to have children. And so I believe they were engaged, maybe even when he dumped her, he made it very clear in her mind that no man would ever want her because she was useless and broken, because she would not be able to have children. So she's sort of written it all off, and she's going to take joy in these kids that she helps through her job as a social worker.
A winner.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, you're well rid of him, girl. Just there.
Yes.
Yeah. You're well rid of him. So I enjoyed this a lot. Obviously, her work as a social worker, factors in with Aiden's work as a police officer. There's a definite faith thread. There was a little bit of Aiden coming back to church because of Lindsay, as opposed to because he wanted to get right with God. But then that moved on. So it wasn't so much that I was like, you're there for the wrong reasons, Buster. But at first it was, sort of, oh, well, I want to see her again, so I guess I'll go to church, kind of thing.
I think that happens in real life.
Oh,
and
totally.
hopefully it does also happen that the person who is there for the wrong reason finds the right reason.
Right. I mean, because for real, like God's going to knock on your heart. And if you're in church, then you're just giving him more opportunities to do it. So it's all good. God doesn't care why you walk through the door, just come through the door. So So, but he couldn't have been anything else, and she couldn't have been anything else. And it just was a really fun story. It exceeded my expectations.
Cool.
Which
I love when that happens.
I do too. Yeah. It was really enjoyable. And again, I liked the fact that his job was so necessary, because I figured that I'd end up with all these police officers who just like they could have been bakers and no one would care. But so far that was not the case. So if we go sort of fast to do one more. If we want to.
I have one more.
I want to hear Narelle's female police officer.
Yes.
I don't actually have another one.
You haven't worked it out? Okay.
I have a suspicion.
Yes, we're going to talk about Elizabeth Maddrey, and we're going to talk about the Baxter Family Bakery,
of course,
and Arcadia Valley, and Valerie, who's our female police officer. Do you remember her name?
Pop quiz. But I can see her face.
The Herald.
Gloria. And when I thought about these books, it was Cam in Meredith's book that came up, Tuck in this one in Melanie's book, and it was Gloria. And so it's the 4th book that she's in, Donuts and Daydreams. Although she does appear in earlier books, she turns up at the bakery and she has a regular time she comes in. And the hero is Jonah. And so Gloria has a big secret. And I'm not going to talk about what that is, because that would completely spoil the book. And that the setup is that Jonah has been very interested in her. This is over a few years by memory. It's a while since I've read it. And she keeps saying, no, I can't date you. So he moves on because she really struggles with him moving on. And it's unpacking how her past impacts the present is what the book's about. And I had meant to reread all these books, but I ran out of time, because I was going to go back to the beginning and work through the Arcadia Valley. But if I had have had more time, it would have been done. But anyway, we have a female police officer, and it's Gloria, and she's amazing.
You are absolutely correct. And I'm embarrassed that I didn't think of it.
See,
I didn't even think about the sexism in what I had chosen or what's in readily available until we were already recording it. And I'm like, wait a minute, all I've got's guys.
I
So,
didn't think, well, I mean, I thought about her, but I didn't include her because I think you could make a case that she could have had a different job and it would have been fine. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
she does some policey things besides go to the bakery and eat donuts.
right. Yeah.
Yes. But isn't that the stereotype? Like, I mean,
Yes,
maybe
that's
that's from
why.
reading
No,
like
it is.
the Jenna Ivanovich, sort of the Stephanie Plum books. They were always, what's the police officer
Well,
guy, what was his name?
yeah.
Morelli was always eating donuts. So I just associated American policemen eat donuts.
And I mean, you've got Walk Like an Egyptian by the Bangles, a song from the 80s, you know,
Yep.
pops at the donut shop.
Yep.
You're going to
So,
find
yeah.
that stereotype
It's
in Canada as well.
there at Tim's,
It's
right?
the Tim Hortons is the hangout for
Yep.
the police officers. Yeah, with the coffee
It's a
shop
thing.
and the donuts.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
Hitting the poor guy who's gluten intolerant or trying to cut sugar, right?
Right.
Guys,
Yeah.
I said it again.
Yeah.
The police
So,
officer.
Donuts and Daydreams is great. So go read all of the Baxter Family Bakery books and then
Just
go and
do.
find Valerie's books in the Arcadia Valley series as well while you're at it.
Because Jonah does move on with Kenya, who is
Mhm.
Valerie's character.
Yep.
That's
So
right.
breaks her little heart.
He did. That was who he was trying to move on with when Gloria turned him down.
Yeah.
Was my character. So yeah,
Okay.
there's some history there.
There is.
It was fun.
Yes.
It was a lot of fun mingling those series together.
Yep.
All right, Valerie.
I don't.
No more?
My piece by Melanie Snitker was my third.
Okay. All right.
So I'm done.
All right. Well, I'll just make a glancing blow mention. We talk about it. I talk about it a lot. Lee Tobin McClain's Cottage at the Beach is the first book. They're all law enforcement with dogs and not explicitly Christian, definitely more sweet, but I always say this, faith gets worked in there. Lee sneaks it in. So and I really enjoy those books. I would reread those books.
I think some of her older indie books have police in them, if I remember right. But boy, it's been a while.
I feel like her Sacred Bond series probably does, but those trend a little more suspensey. So that's why I didn't go digging.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's because I was thinking of Sacred Bond, but then it does, depending on the book you pick up. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. Well, if you have a police officer, hero, or heroine that we missed, and I'm sure you may, we would love to know who they are. Pardon me. Leave us a comment on the YouTube page or on our Facebook page. YouTube page. I sound like I'm 90. Our YouTube channel. It's over there on the internet.
Page. On the World Wide Web.
Know,
that thing that plays videos.
That internet thing. Leave us a comment. And if you're over there on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And we will look forward to hearing from you and for seeing you next week. In the meantime, don't forget to fall in love with a good book. Good night.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.